I have been following Stellar for quite some time, and even with the recent market sell-off, I still think that XLM is one of the better looking charts in this space. Just zooming out real quick, on the 1 year, this is what we are currently looking at. We are in this deep downtrend, but just similar to the downtrend going all the way back to roughly the beginning of December, all the way up until recently, I do expect this one to break out and retarget some of these previous highs. We still need higher highs, we still want higher lows, we still want that bullish structure, but the main thing is that crypto is going to chop until we start to see Bitcoin really break back into some of the key highs. So I'm being patient during this time. I still think that quarter four, if you guys watched my noon video, quarter four is going to be pretty bullish. I still expect us to really kind of follow that 2017 like pattern where we should top somewhere around roughly like quarter one of 2026. So I'm just really kind of taking this one day at a time here, but I don't believe that we are topped out in this market. I still think that we have a lot more to do, especially when it comes to altcoins. Now, talking about altcoins, the biggest thing about XLM that I have, really kind of mentioned throughout this entire year is that, Stellar continues to grow. I don't think that we have witnessed Stellar slow down at all. And I want to say that this has been ongoing for about roughly 4 years now. Even going all the way back to the bear market, right, in 2022. That's when we witnessed Stellar really kind of go all in on smart contracts and DeFi around Stellar. And that's been a huge, big push around having the ecosystem activated in the way that it has been. And a lot of that has to go back to Sorbonne. So if we go back to Sorbonne, smart contracts, we have over 12,000 plus smart contracts. Total contracts deployed is over 14,000, which is insane. This is all through smart contracts on Stellar through Sorbonne, which was originally announced back in, I want to say, late 2021. Didn't launch until I think like the end of 2022. I might be wrong on that. Don't quote me. But it has been doing very well since then. But also just the ecosystem itself, right? When we are looking at the network stats. So right off the rip, we do have a few things. Number one, we have the closing time, but then also processed operations. Now, I will say processed operations are, kind of stable. They're not going crazy like we saw back in, 2022. Again, this is like around the time where we start to see a lot of big moves happening around Stellar. Lately, this has been pretty, just kind of boring or so. Mainly looking at like the 24-hour ledger stats and, transactions themselves. We could see that the total accounts over 9.8 million. We could see the process operations. Again, this is in the last 24 hours. Process operations about almost 8.4 million. Payments about 2.4 million. We could see the DEX trades at about 750, almost 3,000. And the DEX volume was about roughly 9 million XLM. So again, we are starting to see, some increased adoption happening around the DEX itself and even around the network itself. Now, talking about those accounts, the craziest thing about the accounts is that back in 2024, in the beginning of 2024, we hit about 8 million. We hit in, again, we're going back to January of this year. We added over 1 million accounts, but since then we've almost added another 1 million accounts in about 10 months. That's insane. That means that Stellar is starting to really grow in a big way. And it makes sense with a lot of these big announcements and these big events that are happening around Stellar as well, which, again, we just love to see. And then also new assets and trust lines. Now, trust lines themselves, or newly created assets, I should say, are on the downward, right? There's not a ton of newly created assets, but established trust lines and funded trust lines have been growing significantly. Currently speaking, trust lines themselves, we're over 30 million. Total funded trust lines are over 22.4 million. Then we also have payments and trades, nothing too crazy there. And then we also have some circulating supply around XLM and stuff like that. And then we also have transaction success rate. But for the most part, I wanted to really kind of just go over transactions and things like that. And we could see that they are on a big upward push. I bring all this up because we witnessed a video that was dropped at Meridian 2025. This just got dropped on the 28th. We have the best ecosystems keep growing, and the Stellar ecosystem is reaching new heights. And I agree. We just went over it all, right? We see it in front of us. The data does not lie. We are starting to see Stellar really pick up some pace, and we love this. Check it out.
The ecosystem is, if you look at the Stellar ecosystem, so the DeFi volume is up 10 times in the last year. The developer ecosystem is up 50 times, which is growing 5, 6, 8 times faster than overall blockchain industry. Definitely the ecosystem is very vibrant. And as you're saying, for a system that is so distributed, people really enjoy the opportunity to see each other in real life. And a lot of the advancements happens in these exchanges here. The ecosystem.
So yeah, I mean, listen, the ecosystem definitely has been growing significantly. It's all because of some of these big events. Meridian itself, massive, massive event. But we also have been witnessing Stellar participate at almost every single big crypto event. Like for an example, Token 2049 in Singapore. Yes, SDF will be there. In fact, they already are. Today is the first day of this. I mean, it's crazy because these are some of the largest events and Stellar is never missing a single one, which is why we are seeing such significant growth. I mean, almost at every single one of these big events, we see Stellar announce some sort of new integration or partnership. And these are all just major connections. Making connections at these events is why these events are such a huge focus from my point of view. I've always talked about it, even back in the bear market. I said these events are 100% a must focus on because these are great for community engagement, community growth, networking. I mean, that's exactly why we focus on these events. And this one is titled, in terms of a panel, at least the first panel, Real World Finance, Payments, Assets, and Utility at Scale. So again, we are on that utility sort of stage at this point for crypto, where I do think that it's going to completely take over very soon. I think that utility is going to be the main focus, especially with regulations really heating up. But beyond that, there's also a ton of major narratives that have yet to bloom in a big way. I saw this from Benji over on X, and we have the most popular upcoming narratives that are yet to bloom are privacy, AI round 2, usable DeFi interfaces, interoperability. A few weeks before they take hold, in my opinion, and they're all foundational for what comes next. Now, we have here Stellar.org announced privacy strategy and building CTT and private payments, has DeFi that real people are using to truly earn for the first time without having to understand DeFi, BeanZap, Somos, Meru, Airtime as well. I believe that this is Airtime. I might be wrong on that. So AirTM, I'm pretty sure it's Airtime. I'm not too familiar with this use case, but it seems as though they're a pretty large player with over 178,000 plus followers. And I'm pretty sure that this is just a way to, convert and withdraw USDC from what I'm reading here. But beyond that, Layer 0 is coming, bringing access to the world's most popular assets as well. So, again, Stellar has almost everything on lock. Whenever it comes to narrative, Stellar is right there. One of the biggest things right now is tokenization and stablecoins. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but we have been hearing about stablecoins and tokenization almost all year long. And even over here, we have from the head of research at Bitwise, 1 year ago, 98% of questions from wealth managers were about Bitcoin. Today, it's 40% Bitcoin, 60% stablecoins, and tokenization. And guess who has these to unlock? Stellar. The tokenization market right now itself is 31.27 billion. Stablecoin value, 289 billion. On public networks, this is about 17.79 billion for a total RWA value. Obviously, stablecoins, they're all on public networks, so that value is still true. But Stellar has $500+ million tied to it in terms of tokenized RWAs. 20 tokenized RWAs already on chain. 7 stablecoins. Stablecoin value up 15% in the last 30 days. Stablecoin holders up 3% at 556,000. I mean, Stellar has this on complete lock. And these values will grow in a big way, in my opinion, very soon. I mean, listen, I do think that we're kind of marching into an area where the growth around the utility side, things that truly matter, things that truly have value, that's going to be the main focus. I keep saying this all year long, that with regulations and everything happening, I mean, this is a completely different sea change from previous cycles and from previous times in this market where everyone said, oh, utility is still early. It's not going to matter until like 10 years down the road. Well, guess what? Utility is starting to become a big focus now, and it will matter, starting. I think that it already matters. I honestly think that 2025 has been the year of utility. Majority of the altcoins that have skyrocketed in value since going all the way back to October, November of 2024, all of them have been utility-based projects. Yes, there sure has been a few memes in there that have done very well, but for the most part, these are the main projects that we're looking at. And of course, when it comes to tokenization, we did hear from Danielle Dixon. She was on CNBC, and we have access to $3 billion in RWAs just landed on Stellar. Step 1, on-chain plus live on Stellar. Step 2, turning volume into velocity, getting assets into wallets, empowering everyday financial services. The future of real-world finance is here. Check it out.
Let's start with the slew of announcements that have come from Stellar this month. You announced the integration of PayPal's PayYUSD and Ondo Finance's USDY on the Stellar network, and you also integrated short-term treasuries through Centrifuge and tokenized real estate with Red Swan. I mean, all told, these assets total around $3 billion. So talk to me about the strategy around these integrations and what they mean for Stellar.
Yeah, it was such a great, we announced them all last week at our annual conference, which was in Rio. It's called Meridian. It was so fun to be able to bring this to life with all of the ecosystem there. Bringing assets on chain is such a crucial part of what we see as the really important next step, which is making sure those assets can be utilized for everyday financial services, lending, borrowing, yield, donations, like all the things that you can think about. And so for us, this was just like the first step. And then there's so much more to do. We don't just want these assets to sit on chain to create volume. We want them to actually create usability. And we think that, we have it's been years that we've been developing the payment network and as well as all of the on and off ramps globally. So to be able to have these assets to be available to end users and businesses, it just creates this full circle. And it's a really important step.
And yeah, I mean, listen, Stellar has always been focused on financial access. They've always been looking at banking the unbanked, ensuring that anyone and everyone can have access to payments across the world or just payments in general, receiving and, sending. So when it comes to this makes 100% perfect sense for them to make sure that everyone has access to tokenized RWAs as well. And this kind of goes hand in hand with this video clip, which we have. Equitable access starts with shifting the entry point from $2,500 to $25. At SDF, our mission is to make that access not only possible, but commonplace globally. Check it out.
I want to look beyond the US for a minute, because as you mentioned earlier, you held the Meridian conference in Rio de Janeiro. And a big focus of that event was, of course, global adoption and the idea of tokenized real world assets. For you at the Stellar Development Foundation, how are you thinking about adoption of RWAs abroad and how it might differ from the US?
Well, I think that one of the things that's so important for, even in the US, that's really important is it lowers the barrier to entry when you actually can change your money market fund to the entry point being $2,500 to $25, which is what we've seen happen in the market. So that's a really important first step in the US. But if we think about like in LATAM and on the African continent, there hasn't been a lot of ability to hold US treasuries before. And so now you can, and you can bleed into that market and make it so that it's just commonplace for them. And that's huge. We see wallets who are already trying to leverage these assets and bring them to their users. And that just opens up a whole world of everyday financial services that a lot of these users and these businesses have never had access to. It's part of our mission. It's part of what the SDF has always been focused on, which is creating that equitable access to the global financial system and doing it with financial institutions that are going to benefit from it as well. So it's a nice two-sided market, and we want to see those markets grow.
And this is 100% why tokenization is booming, because it drops every single major obstacle to entry. I've said this even around tokenized real estate. It allows the cost of entry to drop massively. This is where we start to see Axis really grow. This is where we start to see these asset classes completely grow as well, because you now have a lot more, hands in the pot. So when it comes to this, yes, Stellar is absolutely killing the game. They are ensuring that we see mass adoption of select things like tokenization, and I'm extremely bullish about this. This is also why I've said that Stellar is changing the game. They are 100% a huge piece of the space. And if you're not focused on XLM, I really do think that you're missing a big target in the space. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.